The poisoned dart flew through the shadowed forest with deadly precision, aimed directly at Oliver Young's exposed throat as he crouched beside the creek, unaware that assassins had been tracking him for 3 days through the wilderness. Gruksha saw it first from her hidden position 20 yards away, where she had been watching the human man with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, ever since she had caught his scent near her territory that morning. Her powerful legs launched her forward before her mind could fully process the decision, her body moving on pure instinct as the dart sailed through the dappled sunlight beneath the ancient trees. She collided with Oliver just as the projectile would have struck him, her broad shoulder taking the impact as both of them crashed into the shallow water with a tremendous splash. The poison worked fast. Gruksha felt it burning through her veins before they had even finished tumbling across the creek bed, her green skin already feeling hot and tight where the dart protruded from her flesh. Oliver scrambled backward in the water, his hand instinctively reaching for the knife at his belt, his eyes wide with shock at the sight of the orc woman who had seemingly attacked him from nowhere. Then he saw the dart embedded in her shoulder, saw the dark veins already spreading from the wound like black lightning across her skin, and understanding flooded his features just as shouts erupted from the forest behind them. 3 men burst from the undergrowth, dressed in the dark leather armor of the king's rangers, bows already drawn with fresh arrows nocked. Oliver recognized them immediately, his stomach dropping like a stone. These were not King's Rangers at all but mercenaries, wearing stolen uniforms. The same men who had been hunting him since he had witnessed their captain murder a merchant family on the northern road 2 weeks ago. "The orc saved you, Young," the leader called out, a scarred man named Patrick who Oliver had once considered a friend. "But she cannot save you from 3 arrows at once. Come quietly and we will make it quick. Resist, and we will make you watch her die slowly from the nightshade poison first." Gruksha tried to rise from the water, but her legs would not obey. The poison was already affecting her nervous system, turning her powerful muscles to lead. She managed to prop herself up on one elbow, her amber eyes fixing on Oliver with an intensity that took his breath away despite the chaos surrounding them. "Run," she growled through clenched teeth, her small tusks catching the light. "I chose this. Run, human." Oliver did not run. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone present, including himself. He moved closer to Gruksha, positioning his body between her and the 3 assassins, his knife held in a steady hand despite the trembling he felt in his core. "You want me, you will have to go through her," he said, his voice carrying across the creek with unexpected authority. "And if you think I will stand by while someone dies for me, you do not know me at all, Patrick." The scarred man laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Noble to the end, Young. That is why you were always too soft for this line of work. Your father would be ashamed." "My father was a good man who died protecting people who could not protect themselves," Oliver said quietly. "If he would be ashamed of me defending someone who just saved my life, then I never knew him at all." The 3 men began to spread out, moving to flank their position. Oliver knew he could not fight all 3, especially not while protecting Gruksha. His mind raced through possibilities, each one more desperate than the last. The creek was too shallow to provide cover, the forest too far to reach before arrows found their marks, and Gruksha was growing weaker by the second behind him. Then Gruksha did something unexpected. With the last of her strength before the poison fully claimed her consciousness, she let out a ululating war cry that echoed through the forest like thunder, a sound so primal and fierce that birds exploded from the trees and small animals fled in terror. The 3 assassins hesitated, their faces going pale, because that particular call was one that every human who lived near orc territories knew well. It was a death challenge, a call that would bring every orc within hearing distance to witness and potentially join a battle. "You stupid creature," Petrick snarled, fear now mixing with his anger. "You just called your own people here to watch you die." But Gruksha was smiling as her eyes fluttered closed, her body finally succumbing to the poison's grip. "Worth it," she whispered, so quietly that only Oliver heard her. Then her head fell back into the shallow water, and she moved no more. Oliver felt something break open inside his chest, a fury so pure and hot that it burned away his fear. He had spent the last 2 weeks running, hiding, trying to find someone who would listen to his testimony about Petrick's crimes. He had been afraid, cautious, always thinking about survival. But this orc woman, this stranger who owed him nothing, had thrown herself in front of death for him without hesitation. He was done running. Oliver launched himself forward with a roar, his knife flashing in the sunlight. The assassins had expected him to cower or try to flee, not to attack. His knife found the throat of the nearest man before the mercenary could release his arrow. As the body fell, Oliver grabbed the bow and quiver, rolling behind a fallen log as 2 arrows thudded into the wood where he had been standing. The next minutes were a desperate dance of survival. Oliver was a skilled archer, trained by his father who had been a legendary hunter, but he was outnumbered and outpositioned. He managed to wound Petrick in the shoulder before his borrowed arrows ran out, and then it became a game of cat and mouse through the creek bed, using rocks and trees and the terrain itself as weapons and shields. He did not know how long he fought. Time seemed to stretch and compress in strange ways, each heartbeat an eternity, each breath a victory. He was bleeding from a dozen small cuts, his ribs aching from where he had taken a glancing blow from a club, but he refused to fall. Gruksha had not given her life so he could die minutes later. The remaining assassin besides Petrick rushed him from the side, and Oliver barely managed to sidestep, using the man's own momentum to send him crashing face first into a boulder. The mercenary did not get up again. That left only Petrick, wounded and furious, circling Oliver with his sword drawn. They were both exhausted now, both bleeding, both desperate. The scarred man was the better swordsman by far, but Oliver had something Petrick lacked, a reason to live that went beyond gold and fear. "She is probably already dead," Petrick panted, gesturing toward where Gruksha lay motionless in the creek. "You are going to die for nothing, young, just like your father did." Oliver did not take the bait. He kept his breathing steady, his eyes on Petrick's center mass rather than his weapon, the way his father had taught him. "Wait for the opening. Be patient. Let your enemy's anger work for you." Petrick lunged, his sword cutting a vicious arc toward Oliver's midsection. Oliver twisted, felt the blade slice through his shirt and kiss his ribs, but he was already moving inside Petrick's guard. His knife, smaller but faster, found the gap beneath the stolen armor and punched upward into the scarred man's heart. Petrick's eyes went wide with shock. He tried to speak, blood bubbling at his lips, but no words came. Oliver held him as he fell, lowering the dying man to the ground with a gentleness that Petrick had never shown his victims. "I forgive you," Oliver whispered, though he did not know if that was true or just something that needed to be said. Then Petrick was gone, his eyes staring sightlessly at the canopy above. Oliver did not wait to see if more enemies would come. He stumbled back to the creek, his legs barely holding him upright, and dropped to his knees beside Gruksha. She was still breathing, but barely, her chest rising and falling in shallow, irregular movements. The black veins had spread across her neck and face now, a dark web against her green skin. He had seen nightshade poisoning before. His mother had been an herbalist, and she had taught him the properties of every plant in the forest before fever took her when he was 12. Nightshade was deadly, but there was an antidote, a rare flower that grew only in the deepest parts of the forest where sunlight barely reached the ground. Moonveil blossoms. He would need at least 3 to make a paste strong enough to counteract the poison already in her system. The problem was that the nearest place he knew they grew was half a day's hard travel from here, through dangerous territory, and he would have to leave Gruksha alone and vulnerable while he searched. But if he stayed with her, she would die within hours. There was no good choice, only different ways to fail. Then Oliver heard what Gruksha had heard, what her war cry had been meant to summon. Footsteps, many of them, moving through the forest with the confident stride of those who feared no enemy. Orcs, responding to her call. Oliver stood and turned to face them, his knife held loosely at his side in a non-threatening position, though he knew it would do him no good if they decided he was an enemy. 7 orcs emerged from the tree line, 5 males and 2 females, all of them armed with crude but effective weapons. They stopped at the edge of the creek, taking in the scene before them with hard, calculating eyes. The largest of them, a male with scars crisscrossing his bare chest and a massive war axe strapped to his back, pointed at Oliver with one thick finger. "Human killed Gruksha," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "We kill human, slowly." "No," said one of the females, stepping forward. She was older than the others, her green skin weathered and lined, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Look at the bodies. Look at the dart." Human defended her after she was struck. The scarred male, clearly the leader, moved closer to examine Gruksha. His expression, already grim, turned thunderous when he saw the spreading veins of poison. He reached down and snapped the dart free with surprising gentleness, sniffing the tip before tossing it aside with disgust. "Nightshade," he confirmed. "She dies soon." "Not if I can help it," Oliver said, drawing their attention back to him. Every orc in the clearing tensed at his words, hands moving to weapons. He held up his empty hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I know where to find the antidote. Moonveil blossoms. But I need time to gather them and return. She needs protection while I am gone." "Will you guard her?" The orcs looked at each other, clearly uncertain. The old female spoke again, her tone cautious. "Why would humans save orc? Gruksha is nothing to you." "She is everything to me," Oliver said simply. "She threw herself in front of death for a stranger. That is more honor than I have seen from most of my own kind. I will not let her die if I can prevent it." The scarred leader studied Oliver for a long moment, his eyes revealing nothing. Then he grunted and gestured to 2 of the other males. "Kragosh, Durgal, go with human. If he tries to run, break his legs and bring him back. If he finds flowers, help him return quickly. If Gruksha dies while you are gone, bring me his head." Oliver nodded, accepting the terms without argument. 2 of the orcs moved to flank him, and he noticed they were both young, probably chosen because they were fast runners who could catch him if he bolted. He had no intention of running, but he appreciated the pragmatic logic. "What is your name, human?" the old female asked as he prepared to leave. "Oliver Young," he replied, "and I will bring her back, I swear it." "I am Morgra," the female said, "and that is Thrak, our war chief. Gruksha is his daughter." Oliver felt his stomach drop. Of course she was. Of course the orc woman who had saved him was the daughter of a war chief who could crush his skull with one hand. But he simply nodded again and turned to go, his 2 escorts falling in step beside him. The journey was brutal. Oliver pushed himself beyond exhaustion, running when he could, jogging when he could not run, walking only when his body absolutely refused to continue. The two young orcs, Kragosh and Durgal, kept pace easily, their greater stamina making the trip seem almost leisurely for them. They did not speak to him, but neither did they threaten him. They simply watched him with the intensity of predators guarding wounded prey. As they traveled deeper into the forest, the light grew dimmer and the trees more twisted. This was old growth, the kind of forest that had existed since before humans built their first settlements on this continent. The air itself felt different here, thick with moisture and the smell of decay and rebirth, all mixed together. Oliver found the grove where moonveil blossoms grew as the sun was beginning to set. The flowers glowed faintly in the gathering darkness, their pale blue petals luminescent in the shadows. He gathered 5 of them, more than he needed but not wanting to risk having too few. Each blossom he picked caused the others nearby to dim slightly, as if they were all connected to some greater source of light. Kragosh watched him work with obvious curiosity. "Why do flowers glow?" the young orc asked, breaking his silence for the first time. "My mother said they store sunlight during the day and release it at night," Oliver explained as he carefully wrapped the blossoms in large leaves to protect them. "She said they were the forest's way of keeping a little piece of day alive in the darkness." "Your mother was wise," Durgal said quietly. "Our healers say similar things." Oliver looked up surprised. "Orc healers know of Moonveil, of course," Kragosh snorted. "Orcs are not stupid, human. We know plants, we know healing. We know many things your people think we are too savage to understand." There was no anger in his voice, just a weary resignation that made Oliver feel ashamed. How many times had he heard other humans speak of orcs as mindless brutes, good only for fighting and dying? How often had he nodded along without challenging those assumptions? "I am sorry," Oliver said. "You are right. My people judge yours unfairly. I have been guilty of that too." The two young orcs exchanged surprised looks. Apparently apologies from humans were uncommon. Kragosh grunted and gestured back the way they had come. "We return now. Gruksha needs flowers before sunrise or she will be beyond saving." They ran through the night, and this time Oliver did not have to push himself because Kragosh and Durgal took turns half carrying him when his legs threatened to give out. It was a strange feeling, being supported by those who should have been his enemies, but Oliver was too tired and too focused on getting back to Gruksha to question it. They reached the creek as dawn was breaking, the sky turning from black to purple to pink above the trees. Oliver nearly collapsed with relief when he saw that Gruksha was still breathing, though she looked even worse than before. The black veins now covered most of her visible skin, and her breathing was so shallow, it barely moved her chest. Oliver immediately set to work, crushing the moonveil blossoms between 2 smooth stones that Morgra brought him, mixing the luminescent paste with water from the creek until it reached the right consistency. His hands shook with exhaustion as he worked, but his mother's training guided him through each step with automatic precision. Throck watched him with unreadable eyes as he applied the paste to the wound where the dart had struck, then carefully spooned a small amount between Gruksha's lips. The antidote needed to work from both outside and inside to be effective against nightshade that had already spread through the bloodstream. "How long?" Throck asked, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "Hours," Oliver admitted. "Maybe a day. If the poison has damaged her heart or lungs too severely, the antidote may not be enough. I am sorry. I wish I could promise more." "You are honest," Morgra observed. "That is more than most humans would give us." Oliver settled down beside Gruksha to wait, refusing to leave her side despite his own exhaustion. The orcs made camp around them, posting guards and starting a small fire to warm food. To Oliver's surprise, they offered him some of their provisions. a thick stew that tasted better than anything he had eaten in weeks. As the day wore on and Gruksha's condition remained unchanged, Oliver found himself talking with the orcs more than he ever had with his own kind in recent years. Morgra told him stories of orc traditions, of honor codes and family bonds that were far more complex than human understanding gave them credit for. Kragosh and Durgal, emboldened by their chief's tolerance of the human, asked him questions about human settlements and customs with genuine curiosity. Thrak remained apart, sitting near his daughter with his massive arms crossed over his chest, his eyes never leaving her face. Oliver understood that grief all too well. He had sat beside his own dying mother in much the same way, helpless to do anything but watch and hope. As night fell again, Oliver felt his eyes growing heavy despite his determination to stay alert. He must have dozed off because he woke suddenly to find Morgra shaking his shoulder gently. "Look," she said, pointing at Gruksha. The black veins were receding. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely retreating back toward the original wound site. Gruksha's breathing had deepened, become more regular. As Oliver watched with growing hope, her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first but clearing as consciousness returned. "Father," she said weakly, her voice hoarse. "Why are you here? Where am I?" Thrak let out a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both, dropping to his knees beside his daughter and gathering her into his arms with surprising gentleness for someone so large and fierce. The other orcs crowded around, everyone speaking at once, relief and joy evident in every voice. Oliver remained where he was, not wanting to intrude on the family moment. He felt his own eyes burning with tears, though whether from relief or exhaustion or something else entirely, he could not say. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Gruksha's eyes found him over her father's shoulder. Their gazes locked, and Oliver saw recognition dawn in her amber eyes, followed by confusion and then something that might have been wonder. "You stayed," she said, loud enough to be heard over the celebration. The other orcs fell quiet. "You did not run, I told you to run. You told me a lot of things while you were unconscious," Oliver said with a tired smile. "I chose not to listen." "You avenged me," Thrak said, his tone making it not quite a question. "The dead humans by the creek. You killed them." "They were assassins," Oliver explained. "They were trying to kill me because I witnessed them murder innocent people. Your daughter saved my life without knowing anything about me or why I was being hunted. She deserves better than having her sacrifice mean nothing." Gruksha tried to sit up, but her father pushed her gently back down. "Rest, daughter. You were very close to the final darkness. Thanks to this human, you were pulled back. Thanks to you as well," Oliver corrected. "If you had not protected her while I searched for the antidote, if you had not allowed me to go at all, she would have died. We saved her together." Morgra made a considering sound. "This human speaks with honor. He gives credit where credit is due and does not seek glory for himself. These are orc virtues." "These are just virtues," Oliver said. "Or they should be for any thinking being." Thrak stood and approached Oliver, towering over him by at least 2 feet. Oliver held his ground, meeting the war chief's eyes without challenge but without fear. If Thrak wanted to kill him despite everything, there was nothing Oliver could do to stop him anyway. Instead, Thrak extended his forearm in the warrior's greeting, the orc gesture of respect between equals. Oliver clasped it without hesitation, feeling the incredible strength in the war chief's arm, knowing that Thrak was being extraordinarily gentle to avoid crushing his human bones. "You have earned a debt," Thrak said formally. "My daughter's life for your actions. This is blood debt, sacred among our people. What would you ask of me, Oliver Young?" Oliver had not thought that far ahead. He had been so focused on saving Gruksha that he had not considered what might come after. Now he realized he had a choice to make, one that could change the trajectory of his entire life. "I ask for safe passage through your territory," he said carefully. "I need to reach the capital to report what I saw, to bring the corrupt men to justice. But the roads are watched and I cannot go around. Through your lands is the only way." "Granted," Throck said immediately. "But that is not enough to satisfy blood debt. That is merely a favor. Ask for more." Oliver hesitated, then spoke the words he had not known were in his heart until they emerged. "Then I ask for the chance to know your daughter better, to speak with her and learn from her, if she is willing. She showed me courage I did not know existed. I would understand what creates such a spirit." The clearing fell absolutely silent. Several of the orcs looked shocked, others angry. Even Morgra seemed taken aback. Throck's expression was unreadable, but his eyes narrowed dangerously. "You asked to court my daughter," Throck said slowly. "A human asks to court an orc. This has never been done." "Not here, not in any clan I know." "Then I will be the first to ask," Oliver said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Or the last if she refuses, but I will not pretend I did not feel something when she looked at me before she fell. I will not dishonor her sacrifice by hiding what is in my heart." Gruksha made a strangled sound from where she lay. All eyes turned to her. She had managed to prop herself up on one elbow again, her green skin flushed darker with what might have been embarrassment or anger or something else entirely. "You are insane," she told Oliver. "You are absolutely insane. I am an orc. You are human. My people will exile me." "Your people will kill you. This cannot work." "You are probably right," Oliver agreed. "But I would still like to try if you are willing. If not, I will leave and you will never see me again. But I had to ask. You threw yourself in front of death for me. The least I can do is be honest about what that meant." Gruksha stared at him for a long moment, her amber eyes searching his face for deception or mockery. She would find neither because Oliver had never been more sincere in his life. Something about seeing her fall, about fighting to save her, about sitting beside her through the night wondering if she would wake up, it had changed something fundamental inside him. "I will think about it," she said finally. "After I can walk without falling over, after I can think clearly. After the antidote finishes its work, then I will give you my answer." "That is all I ask," Oliver said. Throck grunted. "You will stay with us until Gruksha is fully healed. This is practical, not acceptance. You know the plants. You can make sure the antidote continues to work. When she is well, we will discuss this madness further." Oliver nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Chief Throck. I will do everything I can to help her recover." "I know you will," Throck said. "Because if she dies after surviving the poison, I will assume you are responsible, and I will remove your spine through your throat." He said it so casually that it took Oliver a moment to realize it was not a joke. When he did, he swallowed hard and nodded again. "Understood." The next days fell into a rhythm that felt almost dreamlike to Oliver. The orc camp was temporary, set up near the creek because of Gruksha's condition, but even temporary orc shelters were more sophisticated than he had expected. They used frames of bent saplings covered with large leaves and animal hides, creating structures that were waterproof and surprisingly comfortable. Gruksha recovered steadily, the black veins fading to green, and then disappearing entirely over the course of 5 days. Oliver checked the wound site multiple times daily, applying fresh moonveil paste and monitoring for any signs of infection or lingering poison. She tolerated his ministrations with good humor, though he noticed she watched him with an intensity that made his hands shake sometimes. When she was strong enough to sit up unaided, she began asking him questions. Where was he from? What was his family like? Why had the assassins wanted him dead? Oliver answered honestly, finding it surprisingly easy to talk to her. She listened without judgment, asking pointed questions that showed she understood human politics better than most humans did. In turn, he asked her about orc culture, about her life before that day at the creek. She told him about growing up as a chief's daughter, about the pressure to be strong and worthy, about her mother who had died in a border skirmish with humans when Gruksha was young. "I do not hate humans," she said one evening as they sat by the fire together, the rest of the camp having given them a bit of privacy at Morgra's subtle insistence. "But I do not trust them either. They fear what they do not understand, and they kill what they fear. My mother was trying to return a lost human child to its village when she was shot by hunters who thought she was kidnapping it." Oliver felt his heart clench. "I am sorry. That is unforgivable. Yet you ask me to trust you," Gruksha said, turning to look at him. "You ask me to risk my heart on a human who could decide tomorrow that I am a monster after all." "I could say the same," Oliver pointed out gently. "You could decide I am too weak, too soft, too human to be worth your time. Trust is a two-way bridge, Gruksha. Both of us have to build it together, or it will never hold our weight." She smiled, a real smile that made her tusks catch the firelight and her eyes crinkle at the corners. "You are very strange for a human, Oliver Young, but I think I like your strangeness. Is that a yes?" He asked, hardly daring to hope. "It is a maybe," she replied, possibly leaning toward yes. "Ask me again when I can beat you in a sparring match." Oliver laughed. "That seems unfair. You are much stronger than me." "Exactly," Gruksha said with a grin. "So you had better train hard if you want to earn a definitive answer." True to her word, Gruksha insisted on sparring with Oliver as soon as Morgra declared her fit enough for physical activity. Oliver had learned to fight from his father and from hard experience on the road, but Gruksha had been trained since childhood in the brutal efficiency of orc combat styles. She knocked him on his rear within seconds of their first bout. "Again," she said, offering him a hand up. They sparred every day after that, and slowly Oliver began to understand how she moved, how she thought during combat. He would never match her raw strength, but he was faster and could use that to his advantage if he was clever. More importantly, the sparring sessions became a way for them to communicate without words, to learn each other's rhythms and instincts. 2 weeks after the poisoning, Gruksha finally managed to pin Oliver during a match. She had him on his back with her knee on his chest and her hand around his throat, not choking but holding him in place. They were both breathing hard, both sweaty from exertion, and Oliver was very aware of how close her face was to his. "I win," she said. "You always win," Oliver replied. "I am starting to think you just like pinning me to the ground." Gruksha's eyes widened slightly, and Oliver realized how that had sounded. He felt his face flush hot with embarrassment, but before he could apologize, Gruksha laughed. It was a rich, genuine sound that made something warm bloom in Oliver's chest. "Maybe I do," she admitted. "You make interesting faces when you are flustered." "Glad I can entertain you," Oliver said dryly. "You do more than entertain me," Gruksha said, her tone becoming serious. "You make me think about things I never considered before, about what it means to be honorable across the divide between our peoples, about whether the divide even needs to exist at all." "And what have you concluded?" Oliver asked carefully. Instead of answering with words, Gruksha leaned down and kissed him. Her tusks made the angle slightly awkward, but Oliver figured it out quickly, tilting his head just so and kissing her back with all the emotion he had been holding inside for weeks. Her lips were softer than he expected, her breath warm against his skin, and when she finally pulled back, they were both trembling slightly. "That is my answer," Gruksha said. "Yes," Oliver Young, I will court you or let you court me, or however humans phrase these things. But you should know that among my people, courtship is a serious declaration. It means I am willing to fight beside you, to defend you, to build a life with you if that is where this path leads. It is not a casual thing. Good, Oliver said. Because I have never felt less casual about anything in my life. Gruksha smiled and helped him to his feet. We should tell my father. Will he remove my spine through my throat? Oliver asked nervously. Possibly, Gruksha said cheerfully, but probably not. He likes you, though he would never admit it. You saved my life and you have been respectful to our ways. That counts for much. Throck did not remove Oliver's spine, but he did look very much like he wanted to when they told him. The war chief sat silent for so long after their announcement that Oliver began to seriously worry about his continued survival. Finally, Throck sighed deeply and looked at his daughter. You are certain, he asked. This path will not be easy. You will face scorn from our people and violence from his. You will never be fully accepted by either world. I am certain, Gruksha said firmly, and I am strong enough to face whatever comes. You taught me that, father. Throck turned his gaze to Oliver. And you? Are you strong enough for what is to come? Can you protect my daughter from the hatred of your own kind? I will do everything in my power, Oliver promised. But I also trust Gruksha to protect herself. She has already proven she is stronger and braver than I could ever hope to be. Smart answer, Morgra said from the other side of the fire. Acknowledging her strength while promising your support, you learn quickly, human, Throck grunted. Very well. You have my blessing to court Gruksha. But know this, Oliver Young. If you ever betray her, if you ever make her regret this choice, there will be nowhere in this world or the next where you can hide from me. I would expect nothing less, Oliver said sincerely. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Oliver had experienced or even heard of. Orc customs regarding romance were practical and direct, focused on proving compatibility through shared work and challenges, rather than flowers and poetry. Gruksha took him hunting and was amused by his adequate but unremarkable skills with a bow. He took her foraging for herbs and was impressed by her quick memory for plant identification. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, discovering shared views on honor and justice while respectfully disagreeing on other matters. Gruksha thought humans were too concerned with social niceties that masked true feelings. Oliver thought orcs could benefit from occasionally softening their bluntness. They both agreed that their people's mutual prejudices were stupid and destructive. As the weeks passed, and Gruksha returned to full strength, Oliver knew he needed to address the matter that had brought him into the forest in the first place. He needed to reach the capital and report what he had seen. Justice demanded it, and so did the memory of the murdered family. I need to leave soon, he told Gruksha one morning as they sat by the creek where they had first met. The men who tried to kill me were working for someone powerful. If I do not expose them, more people will die. I know, Gruksha said. I have been thinking about that. You cannot go alone. The roads are still dangerous for you. I have your father's permission to cross through orc lands, Oliver reminded her. That will get me close to the capital without using the main roads. It will get your body within a day's travel of human territory, Gruksha corrected. And then what? You emerge from orc lands and immediately get arrested or killed on sight. You need help, Oliver. You need me. Oliver shook his head. I cannot ask you to come with me. If humans see you, they will attack. I could not bear it if something happened to you because of me. You are not asking. I am offering, Gruksha said firmly. And before you argue, consider this. I am a chief's daughter. I have diplomatic immunity among orc clans, and by treaty, that immunity extends to human territories as well. even if humans rarely honor it. If I accompany you and announce myself properly, I can claim the right to speak before the king's justice. You would have an orc witness to your testimony. That carries weight because everyone knows orcs do not lie. Oliver had not considered that angle. Will your father allow it? My father taught me to make my own choices, Gruksha said, but he will support my decision because he knows I am right. You need me, Oliver. Let me do this. In the end, Throck did support Gruksha's decision, though he insisted she take Kragosh and Durgal as additional protection. Morgra provided them with tokens that would grant safe passage through allied orc territories, and the war chief gave Oliver a weapon that made his breath catch. A beautifully crafted short sword with a blade that seemed to shimmer in the light. This was my father's weapon, Throck said as he presented it. It has taken many lives in defense of those who could not defend themselves. I give it to you not because I think you are worthy, but because my daughter thinks you are. Prove her right, Oliver Young. Oliver accepted the sword with shaking hands, understanding the incredible honor being bestowed. I will carry it with pride and use it with wisdom. Thank you, Chief Throck. The journey to the capital took 12 days through orc territories, and then 2 more days through the borderlands between orc and human control. Those 2 days were the most tense, as they encountered human patrols who reacted with fear and aggression at the sight of orcs traveling openly. But Gruksha handled each encounter with calm authority, presenting her tokens and declaring her diplomatic status before any violence could erupt. Most of the soldiers backed down, though Oliver could see the hatred in their eyes. A few seemed curious, watching Gruksha with an interest that went beyond fear. They reached the capital on a market day, and their arrival caused an immediate sensation. Crowds parted before them, people staring and pointing and whispering. Gruksha walked with her head high, ignoring the slurs and threats, her hand never straying to her weapon despite the obvious provocation. Oliver led them directly to the palace gates, where he demanded an audience with the king's justice on a matter of murder and corruption. The guards were initially dismissive until Gruksha stepped forward and formally invoked her diplomatic right to witness testimony. That changed everything. Within an hour, they were in a formal chamber, standing before 3 judges who presided over serious crimes. Oliver told his story clearly and completely, describing what he had seen on the Northern Road, naming Petrick and his associates, providing details about their stolen ranger uniforms and their connection to Lord Martok, a powerful noble who controlled much of the northern trade. When he finished, one of the judges turned to Gruksha. "And you, Orc, what is your testimony?" "I have no direct knowledge of the murders he describes," Gruksha said, "but I can testify to his character. Oliver Young was attacked by assassins who were hunting him. When I was struck by poison meant for him, he did not flee as he could have. He fought to protect me, avenged me, and then risked everything to save my life. A man who would do this for a stranger, for an orc, is not a liar. I stake my honor on his truthfulness." The judges conferred in whispers. Finally, the eldest spoke. "Your testimony is noted and carries weight. We will investigate these claims. Lord Martok will be questioned. If evidence supports your accusation, justice will be served." It was not the immediate satisfaction Oliver had hoped for, but it was progress. More importantly, he had been heard. The murdered family would not be forgotten. As they left the palace, Gruksha took Oliver's hand, intertwining her fingers with his. People stared, but Oliver found he did not care anymore. Let them stare. Let them whisper. He had found something precious and rare, and no amount of prejudice could diminish that. They found lodging at an inn on the edge of the city, a place rough enough that the innkeeper cared more about coin than about who was paying. Kragosh and Durgal took rooms on either side of them, protective and watchful. That night, lying on a lumpy mattress in a room that smelled of old ale and older smoke, Oliver felt Gruksha move closer to him in the darkness. "Thank you for letting me come with you," she said softly. "I know it was harder with me here, more stairs, more danger." "It was easier with you here," Oliver corrected. "You gave me courage I did not know I had. You always do." Gruksha was quiet for a moment. "What happens now? After the investigation, after justice is served or not served?" "What do we do, Oliver?" Oliver had been thinking about that question for days. "We make our own path. Find a place where we can be together without constantly fighting for acceptance. Maybe on the frontier, where people are too busy surviving to care about whether love crosses species lines." "The frontier is dangerous," Gruksha pointed out. "Everywhere is dangerous for us," Oliver said. "At least on the frontier we would be honest danger, not the whispered kind that hides behind false civility." Gruksha rolled over to face him, her amber eyes catching the moonlight filtering through the small window. "I would like that. A place of our own, built with our own hands. No clans, no cities, no expectations except the ones we set for ourselves." "We could have a farm," Oliver suggested. "My father taught me to work the land before he became a hunter. You could teach me more about tracking and wilderness survival. We would be self-sufficient." "And when people came seeking trouble because they could not stand the sight of us together?" Gruksha asked. "We would handle it," Oliver said. "Together, like we have handled everything else." Gruksha kissed him then, long and deep, and Oliver felt his heart expand with the certainty that this was right, that they were right together despite everything that said they should not be. When they finally broke apart, Gruksha was smiling. "Yes," she said, "let us build something together. Let us prove that honor and love are stronger than fear and hate." The investigation into Lord Marduk took 3 weeks, during which time Oliver and Gruksha remained in the capital, half prisoners and half witnesses, protected by their official status but watched constantly by guards who made no secret of their distrust. Kragosh and Durgal grew restless, unused to being cooped up in the city, but Gruksha kept them calm with promises of returning home soon. When the verdict finally came, it was everything Oliver had hoped for. Lord Marduk was found guilty of ordering the murder of the merchant family, of bribing royal rangers, and of attempting to silence witnesses. He was stripped of his titles and lands, and sentenced to life imprisonment. The surviving members of his conspiracy were either executed or imprisoned as well. The murdered family received formal justice, their names cleared and their memories honored. It was not enough, could never be enough, but it was something. Oliver wept when he heard the verdict, tears of relief and grief all mixed together. That night, there was a knock on their door. Oliver answered to find an official courier bearing a letter sealed with the king's own mark. His hands shook as he broke the seal and read the contents. "What does it say?" Gruksha asked. Oliver looked up, his eyes wide. "The king thanks me for my service and courage. He is granting me land on the frontier as a reward. 20 acres of good soil with water rights and timber. It is more than I ever dreamed of owning." "That is wonderful," Gruksha said, her smile genuine despite the irony. The same system that feared and hated her had just given them the means to build a life together. They left the capital the next morning, escorted to the border of human territories by an honor guard that seemed more interested in making sure they left than in protecting them. At the edge of human lands, where the forest grew thick and wild again, Kragosh and Durgal bid them farewell. "You are strange," Kragosh told Oliver, "but you are brave. The chief was right to trust you with his daughter." "Take care of her," Durgal added, "or we will return and take care of you." Oliver clasped their arms in the warrior's greeting he had learned from Thrak. I will protect her with my life. You have my word." The two young orcs nodded and disappeared into the forest, moving with the easy confidence of those who were truly home. Oliver and Gruksha continued on alone, traveling for another week until they reached the lands the king had granted. It was beautiful. A valley with a clear stream running through it, surrounded by hills covered in mixed forest. The soil was dark and rich, the water cold and clean. There was even a small cabin already built by some previous settler who had abandoned their claim, probably driven off by orc raids before the current peace. "It is perfect," Gruksha said, looking around with obvious delight. "We can grow crops in the valley bottom, hunt in the hills, fish the stream. There is everything we need here." They spent the next months working from dawn to dusk, repairing the cabin and expanding it, clearing land for fields, building fences and storage sheds. It was hard work, but satisfying in a way that nothing in Oliver's previous life had been. Every board he nailed, every stone he placed, was building toward a future he had chosen rather than one that had been chosen for him. Gruksha proved to be an invaluable partner in every way. She was stronger and could do the heavy lifting that would have taken Oliver twice as long. She was a better hunter and kept them supplied with fresh meat. And she was patient when Oliver made mistakes, teaching him without mockery or frustration. In turn, Oliver taught her things he knew. How to read and write in human script, which she picked up with startling speed. How to coax maximum yield from crops through careful tending. How to make medicines and remedies from common plants. They learned from each other and grew together, two people building not just a home but a life. They were not alone for long. Word spread that an orc and a human were living together on the frontier, and people came. Some came with curiosity, some with hostility, some with hope. A few were outcasts like themselves, people who did not fit into either orc or human society, and were looking for a place where they could simply be. Oliver and Gruksha welcomed those who came in peace, and defended against those who came with violence. Their reputation grew. The orc woman who had taken poison for a human. The human man who had fought to save her. The couple who proved that honor existed beyond the boundaries of species. A year after they settled the land, Gruksha woke Oliver in the middle of the night, her eyes bright with excitement and fear. "I am pregnant," she said. "I was not sure it was even possible between our kinds, but Morgra was right. She said if the heart bond was strong enough, life would find a way." Oliver sat up, his mind reeling. A child. They were going to have a child. The implications were enormous and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "Are you happy?" Gruksha asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we did not plan this. I know it will make everything more complicated." Oliver pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I am terrified," he admitted. "But yes, I am happy. So happy I can barely breathe. We are going to be parents, Gruksha. We are going to bring a new life into this world, a life that represents everything we believe in." "A child of two worlds," Gruksha whispered. "They will face so much hate, Oliver, from both sides." "They will also have so much love," Oliver countered. "From both sides. And we will teach them to be strong, to be kind, to stand up for what is right no matter what anyone else thinks." Gruksha nodded against his chest. "We will need to marry properly. Not just in our hearts, but with formal recognition. So our child has legal protection." Oliver had been thinking about marriage for months, but had not known how to ask. Among orcs, marriage was a practical arrangement sealed with a simple declaration before witnesses. Among humans, it required ceremonies and paperwork and religious blessings. They would need to find a way to satisfy both traditions. They traveled to Throck's camp when Gruksha was 3 months along, her pregnancy not yet visible but confirmed by every test Morgra could devise. The war chief looked at his daughter for a long moment when she told him, his face unreadable. Then he smiled, a rare expression that transformed his fierce features. "A grandchild," he said softly. "I never thought I would live to see this day. You have made me very happy, daughter." The orc marriage ceremony was held that night, with the entire clan present. Oliver and Gruksha stood before Throck and declared their intention to be life-bonded, to share all things, to fight beside each other until death claimed them. The clan witnessed and accepted, and that was that. Simple, direct, binding. The human ceremony was more complicated. They had to travel to the nearest human settlement with a priest willing to perform a cross-species marriage. It took weeks to find one, a young cleric who believed that love in any form was holy. He married them in a small ceremony with only Kragosh and Durgal as witnesses. The young orcs looking deeply uncomfortable in the human chapel, but refusing to leave their friend unprotected. When their daughter was born 6 months later, attended by Morgra and a human midwife who had overcome her prejudice enough to help, Oliver held the tiny squirming bundle and felt his heart break open with love. She had her mother's green skin and small tusks, her father's brown eyes and softer features. She was perfect and precious and represented hope for a better future. They named her Mira, a name that meant wonder in both human and orc languages. Throck traveled to meet his granddaughter and wept openly when he held her. This hardened war chief reduced to tears by the tiny girl who yawned and grabbed his finger with surprising strength. As Mira grew, so did their small community. More outcasts and idealists arrived, building homes near theirs, creating a village that existed outside the traditional boundaries of either orc or human society. They established their own laws based on honor and mutual respect. They defended each other against threats from both sides. Oliver served as a mediator when disputes arose, his fairness becoming legendary. Gruksha trained their defenders, teaching orc and human to fight alongside each other as equals. Together, they built something neither of their peoples had seen before, a true integration, messy and imperfect but real. One evening, when Mira was 3 years old and playing with a mixture of orc and human children near their expanded home, Gruksha and Oliver sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Do you ever regret it?" Oliver asked quietly. "Everything you gave up to be with me. Your place in your clan, the simple life you could have had." Gruksha took his hand, her grip strong and warm. "Every day," she said, and Oliver's heart sank before she continued. "I regret that I had to give up anything at all. I regret that the world made me choose, but I do not regret choosing you. I would take that poison dart again in a heartbeat, Oliver. Every time. Because you were worth saving and this life we built together was worth fighting for." Oliver raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "I love you. I have loved you since the moment you said worth it and fell unconscious in that creek, maybe even before that, in the instant you threw yourself between me and death without hesitation." "I love you too," Gruksha said, "and I love what we have created together. Not just Mira, but all of this. This community, this dream, this proof that our peoples do not have to be enemies." As the sun set and the first stars appeared, Mira ran up to them, her small face flushed with excitement from playing. She climbed into her mother's lap, then reached for her father, clearly wanting both of them to hold her at once. They managed it awkwardly, making Mira giggle with delight. "Tell the story," Mira demanded as she did every night. "Tell how you met." Oliver and Gruksha exchanged smiles. It was their daughter's favorite tale, one she never tired of hearing. Oliver began, as he always did, describing the day he knelt by a creek unaware of the danger approaching. Gruksha took over when it was time to describe her decision to intervene. explaining how she saw a fellow being in danger and acted without thought of cost. They took turns telling the story, their voices weaving together the tale of poison and rescue, of desperate healing and growing trust, of two people from different worlds who chose each other despite everything. Mira listened with rapt attention even though she knew every word, her eyes bright with wonder that never diminished no matter how many times she heard it. When they reached the end of the story, Mira yawned and snuggled deeper into their combined embrace. "I am glad Mama took the poison dart," she said sleepily, "because then you saved her and then you fell in love and then I got to be born." "We are glad too," Oliver said, kissing the top of her head. "The best things in life often come from the hardest moments, little one." "Your mother taught me that." Gruksha made a sound of disagreement. "We taught each other," she corrected. "That is what love does. It teaches us to be better than we were alone." As Mira drifted off to sleep between them, Oliver looked at his wife, his partner, his greatest adventure. She was watching their daughter with such tenderness that it made his throat tight. This fierce warrior who had thrown herself in front of death without hesitation was now cradling their child with infinite gentleness. "Worth it," Oliver whispered, so quietly that only Gruksha heard. She looked up at him and smiled, understanding completely. "Worth it," she agreed. 1,000 times over. The years continued to pass, bringing challenges and joys in equal measure. Their settlement grew into a proper town, recognized eventually by both orc clans and human kingdoms as neutral ground where representatives could meet and trade without fear. Oliver became an official mediator, traveling to resolve disputes between the species, always accompanied by Gruksha, whose presence reminded everyone that peace was possible. Mira grew into a strong, confident young woman who felt equally comfortable in both worlds. She was not the only mixed-blood child anymore. Other couples had followed Oliver and Gruksha's example, creating families that bridged the divide. The next generation was growing up without the automatic hatred that had defined their parents' youth. It was not perfect. Prejudice still existed on both sides. Violence still erupted sometimes. But the possibility of peace, once proven, could not be unproven. The example Oliver and Gruksha had set continued to spread, inspiring others to question the old hatred and imagine new possibilities. On the 10th anniversary of the day they met, Oliver and Gruksha returned to the creek where it had all begun. The forest was unchanged, still beautiful and wild. The water still ran clear and cold over smooth stones, but everything else was different because they had changed it. They stood together at the spot where Gruksha had fallen, where Oliver had held her and fought for her and refused to let her sacrifice be meaningless. "I come here sometimes," Gruksha admitted, "when I need to remember why we do this, why we keep fighting for peace when it would be easier to give up. I remember the human who stayed when he could have run, the man who valued my life more than his own safety." "I come here too," Oliver said. "I remember the orc who saw a stranger in danger and did not hesitate, who defined herself by her choices rather than her species. You changed my entire world that day, Gruksha." "We changed each other's worlds," Gruksha corrected, echoing her words from years ago. "That is still how it works." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands and listening to the creek burble over stones. Then Gruksha spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "I have been thinking about that day a lot lately, about the moment I decided to jump. I did not know you, did not know if you were good or evil, worthy or wicked. I just knew someone was about to die and I could prevent it. That seemed like enough reason at the time." "Do you still think it was enough?" Oliver asked. Gruksha turned to face him fully, her amber eyes serious. "It was everything. That single choice led to all of this, to us, to Mira, to the town we built, to the peace we are nurturing. One decision made in an instant without calculation or hesitation. If I had stopped to think, I probably would have let you die. I would have told myself it was not my business, that humans and orcs should not mix, that getting involved would only bring trouble. But you did not stop to think, Oliver said. No, Gruksha agreed. I acted from instinct, from the part of me that believes honor is more important than safety. And that instinct gave me everything I value in life. So yes, Oliver Young, it was worth it. It will always be worth it. Oliver pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her strong frame, feeling her return the embrace with careful control of her greater strength. They had learned each other so well over the years, knowing exactly how to fit together despite their physical differences. Thank you, he said softly, for that day, for every day since, for choosing me over and over again. Thank you for being worth choosing, Gruksha replied. And for choosing me back. They walked home together as the sun began to set, taking the familiar path through the forest to the town they had built. Smoke rose from chimneys, children played in the streets, and the sound of mixed laughter carried on the evening breeze. It was home, truly home, in a way that nowhere else had ever been. Mira met them at the door, now 12 years old and already showing signs of the remarkable woman she would become. Behind her, the house was warm and welcoming, filled with the sense of dinner cooking and the subtle signs of a life well lived. "Did you go to the creek?" Mira asked, smiling knowingly. "We did," Oliver confirmed. "It seemed appropriate to visit on the anniversary." "The anniversary of the best day of all our lives," Mira said dramatically, making them both laugh. But she was not wrong. That day by the creek, when Gruksha had thrown herself between Oliver and death, when poison meant for him had struck her instead, when she had fallen saying those two perfect words, that day had been the beginning of everything good in their lives. As they sat down to dinner together, their small family complete in content, Oliver caught Gruksha's eye across the table and mouthed the words she had said that day, the words that had haunted and inspired him ever since. "Worth it." Gruksha smiled and mouthed back the only possible response. "Always." And in that moment, surrounded by love and peace and the life they had built through courage and determination, Oliver knew with absolute certainty that no truer words had ever been spoken. She had taken the poison dart that was meant for him, had collapsed saying it was worth it, and had given him a reason to believe that love could triumph over hate, that honor could bridge any divide, that two people from different worlds could build something beautiful together. The orc had saved the human, and in doing so, they had saved each other. That was the simple truth at the heart of their extraordinary story, the foundation upon which they had built a life worth living and a love worth celebrating. Everything that came after, all the joy and struggle and triumph, flowed from that single moment of selfless courage. She had taken the poison dart. She had said it was worth it, and she had been absolutely, perfectly right.